I still remember the exact shade of gray the sky was that October afternoon. Not the dark, angry gray of a coming storm, but that soft, exhausted color that settles over Manhattan when autumn can't quite decide if it wants to hold on or let go. I was standing outside St. Catherine's Elementary, checking my watch for the third time in as many minutes, when I saw my daughter Emma collapse onto the school steps like her legs had simply given up on her. She was 8 years old. 8 years old, and crying in that silent, shoulder-shaking way that breaks a father's heart clean in half. I'd spent the morning in a conference room on the 47th floor, sealing a deal worth more money than most people see in a lifetime. My signature on 3 documents had just made me richer by several $1,000,000. I'd shaken hands with men in suits that cost more than used cars, accepted congratulations, and felt absolutely nothing. Not pride, not satisfaction, just a dull, persistent emptiness that had become so familiar I'd stopped noticing it most days. But seeing Emma crumpled on those stone steps that cut through everything, I moved toward her, my expensive shoes clicking against the sidewalk, already forming the words I'd say, already preparing to fix whatever was broken. That's what I did. I fixed things. I solved problems. I wrote checks and made phone calls and moved pieces around until everything lined up the way it was supposed to. Then I saw the boy. He couldn't have been more than 9 or 10, wearing jeans so worn the knees were nearly transparent and a jacket that was 2 sizes too small, the cuffs ending halfway up his forearms. His sneakers were held together with duct tape, the silver strips catching what little light filtered through the clouds. His hair needed cutting, falling into eyes that were startlingly clear and present in a way that made him look older than he should have been. He was sitting next to Emma on the steps, and he was talking to her. I stopped walking. Something in my chest tightened. The boy wasn't touching her, he sat a respectful distance away, hands folded in his lap, but he was leaning in slightly, his voice too low for me to hear from where I stood frozen on the sidewalk. Emma's crying had quieted to hiccuping sobs. She was listening to him. Other parents streamed past me, collecting their children, chatting about piano lessons and soccer practice and weekend plans. The usual comfortable noise of the pickup hour. Nobody seemed to notice the homeless boy sitting on the school steps with my daughter. Or maybe they noticed and chose not to see. I'd done that myself 1,000 times, stepping over and around and past people whose circumstances made me uncomfortable. The boy reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. A piece of paper folded many times until it was small and thick. He unfolded it carefully, smoothing the creases against his leg, and showed it to Emma. Her hand came up to her face, wiping at her tears. I started walking again, slower now, trying to hear their conversation. My sister used to get really scared before tests too, the boy was saying. His voice had that careful quality of someone choosing each word with precision. She'd get so nervous she'd throw up sometimes. Her teacher told her something that really helped though. What? Emma's voice was small, younger than 8, wrapped in all the fear and vulnerability of childhood. She said being nervous just means you care. It means whatever you're about to do matters to you. And that's actually a good thing, you know? It means you're not just going through the motions. They're actually trying. I stopped again, maybe 15 feet away, close enough to intervene if needed. Far enough that they hadn't noticed me yet. Emma was looking at the paper he'd shown her. From my angle, I could see it was a child's drawing, done in crayon and marker, showing 2 figures holding hands under a bright sun. My sister drew this for me before the boy's voice caught. Just slightly. He cleared his throat. Before things got hard. She wanted me to remember that even when things are really dark, the sun's still there. You just can't always see it right away. Where's your sister now? Emma asked. The pause that followed felt very long. She's not here anymore, the boy said finally. But she was right about the sun thing. I've checked. Emma looked up at him, her face blotchy and tear-stained but no longer crumbling. You're really brave, she said. The boy laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Nah, brave is when you're scared and you do the thing anyway, like you're gonna do on your test tomorrow. I'm just here. My dad says I have to get an A, Emma said. And there it was, the thing I'd been afraid to hear. The weight I'd placed on her without meaning to. Or maybe I had meant to. Maybe I'd been placing that weight on her for so long I'd forgotten it was even there. That's a lot of pressure, the boy said simply. No judgment in his voice, just acknowledgement. If I don't, he'll be disappointed. The words hit me like a fist to the stomach. Parents are complicated, the boy said. He was folding the drawing back up, creasing it along the same worn lines. They want stuff for you because they love you, but sometimes they don't realize how heavy that stuff can feel. Doesn't mean they don't love you, though. How do you know? Because you're out here crying about it. If you didn't care what your dad thought, you wouldn't be so scared to disappoint him. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, don't you have to go inside? For class? I don't go here, the boy said. I was just walking by and saw you crying. My mom always said we're supposed to stop when someone needs help, even if we don't know them. Where's your mom? Another pause. She's not here either. It's just me now. I felt something crack open in my chest, something that had been sealed shut for longer than I wanted to admit. Emma reached out then and touched the boy's hand, just briefly. I'm sorry you're alone, she said. I'm sorry you're scared. He replied. They sat there for another moment, two children sharing the weight of things they shouldn't have to carry. Then the boy stood up, shoving his hands into his pockets. You're gonna do great tomorrow, he said. And even if you don't, you'll still be you. That doesn't change. He started walking down the steps, and that's when I finally moved. Not toward Emma, toward him. Wait, I said. The boy turned, and I saw his face fully for the first time. Thin, with sharp cheekbones that spoke of too many missed meals. Smudges of dirt on his jaw, but his eyes were clear and direct, meeting mine without flinching. Thank you, I said, for talking to my daughter. He shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. She was sad. It's not a big deal. It's a very big deal, I said. My voice sounded strange in my own ears, thick with something I couldn't quite name. When's the last time you ate? The wariness that flashed across his face was instant and familiar. I'd seen it in boardrooms, that defensive calculation of whether to trust or retreat. I'm fine, he said. I'm sure you are, but I'm asking anyway. When did you last have a meal? He looked at Emma, then back at me. Some silent assessment happening behind those two old eyes. Yesterday morning. There's a church on Amsterdam that does breakfast. Yesterday morning. I'd had coffee and a croissant at my desk that morning, barely tasting either while I reviewed contracts. I'd had sushi for lunch at a place that charged $40 for a basic roll. Last night had been steaks at a client dinner, wine that cost more per bottle than this boy probably saw in a month. What's your name? I asked. Marcus. Marcus. I'm Richard. This is Emma. I put my hand on my daughter's shoulder. She'd stopped crying completely now, watching this exchange with wide eyes. Would you let me buy you dinner? You don't have to do that. I know I don't, but I'd like to. Please. The please seemed to surprise him. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, that too small jacket riding up his thin wrists. Okay, he said finally, but just something small. I don't want to be. I'm not looking for charity. It's not charity, I said. It's dinner. And a thank you. We ended up at a diner 3 blocks away. The kind of place I usually walked past without seeing. Red vinyl booths and checkered floors and menus that were sticky with decades of use. Marcus ordered a burger and fries with the careful precision of someone trying not to appear too hungry, but when the food came, the way he had told the real story. Not fast, he had too much pride for that, but thorough. Making sure nothing was wasted, Emma ate her grilled cheese in small bites, still sniffling occasionally, watching Marcus like he was something rare and important. I ordered coffee I didn't drink and tried to figure out what to say. Where are you staying, Marcus? I asked finally. Around. Guarded again. Different places. Family? No, just that single word, flat and final. No elaboration offered. How long have you been on your own? He looked at me for a long moment, weighing something. Then he said, for months. Since June. For months. I tried to imagine it, a child, alone in this city for months. Summer heat and autumn cold and the 1,000 small cruelties that came with being invisible. I'm sorry, I said. And meant it. It's not your fault. No, but I'm still sorry. We sat in silence while Marcus finished his burger. The waitress came by with the check, and I handed her my card without looking at it. Marcus, I said, I want to help. You already did. You bought me dinner. I mean, really help. There are programs, services, places you could stay that are safe, and no, the word came out harder than before. I appreciate the food, I do. But I'm not going into the system. I've heard about those places. I'd rather take my chances. You can't live on the street. You're a child. I'm doing okay. You're surviving. That's not the same as okay. His jaw tightened. Thanks for dinner, he said, starting to slide out of the booth. Wait. I pulled a business card from my wallet and a pen. I wrote my personal cell number on the back. Take this, please. If you need anything, food, help, anything, you call this number, day or night. Will you do that? He took the card, looked at it, and shoved it in his pocket without reading it. Sure. I mean it, Marcus. I said sure. He looked at Emma. Good luck tomorrow. Remember, the sun's still there. And then he was gone, slipping out of the diner and disappearing into the foot traffic outside. Emma and I sat there in the booth, the remains of our meal cooling between us. Daddy? Emma's voice was very small. Yeah, sweetheart? I don't care if I get in it tomorrow. I'm just going to try my best. Is that okay? I felt something break inside me. Clean and painful and somehow necessary. That's more than okay, I said. That's everything. She came around to my side of the booth and climbed into my lap. Too big for it, really. But I held her anyway, her head tucked under my chin, and felt the enormity of what I'd almost done. How close I'd come to making her into a smaller version of myself, afraid of failure, measuring worth and achievements, unable to see the sun for counting the clouds. I love you, I said into her hair. No matter what, even if you fail every test for the rest of your life, I will love you exactly the same. Do you understand? She nodded against my chest. I want you to be happy, Emma. That's all. That's the only thing that matters. I want you to be happy too, she whispered. I didn't know what to say to that. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been happy. Successful, yes. Wealthy, certainly. But happy? That felt like something from another lifetime, before my wife died. Before I'd buried my grief in work and deals and the relentless accumulation of more. We left the diner as the streetlights were coming on, and I found myself looking for Marcus in every doorway and alley we passed. But the city had swallowed him up again, absorbed him back into that invisible population I'd spent years pretending not to see. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus, about that folded drawing, about his too-thin wrists and his careful dignity, about the way he'd said she's not here anymore with his voice carefully neutral, about a child surviving alone in a city of 8 million people, most of whom would step over him without a second glance. I'd done that. How many times had I done exactly that? I got up at 2 in the morning and went to my home office, turning on my computer. I started searching homeless youth services, foster care statistics, street outreach programs. The numbers were staggering. The stories were worse. By dawn, I'd made a decision. I called my assistant as soon as the sun was up. Cancel my meetings for the next week. I said, all of them, Mr. Garrison. You have the Hendrix pitch on Thursday. That's, I know what it is. Cancel it. There was a pause. Is everything all right? No, I said, but I'm going to try to make it right. I started that morning. I went back to Stiti, Catherine's, and talked to the principal about Marcus. Had they seen him before? Did they know anything about him? I went to the church on Amsterdam that served breakfast and asked questions. I walked the streets of the neighborhood with Marcus's face burned into my memory, looking. I found nothing. Days passed. Emma took her test and did fine, not perfect, but fine, and I told her I was proud of her and meant it. She seemed lighter somehow, freer. We started having dinner together every night, actually sitting at the table and talking instead of eating separately while I worked through emails. I kept looking for Marcus. I expanded my search, driving to different neighborhoods, talking to outreach workers and shelter staff and police officers. I handed out my card to dozens of street kids, told them all the same thing: call if you need anything. Most took the card. None called. 2 weeks passed. 3. A month. I was starting to lose hope when my phone rang at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. Unknown number. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Not creepy panicked. Hello. I said again. Who is this? It's a cough. It's Marcus. I was on my feet instantly. Marcus, where are you? I didn't know who else to. Another cough, wet and rattling. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called. Don't apologize. Tell me where you are. Penn Station. But I might think I'm really sick. Stay there. Stay exactly where you are. I'm coming to get you. I grabbed my keys and my coat and ran. I found him in Penn Station 40 minutes later, huddled against a wall near the Amtrak gates, shivering despite the heat being pumped through the building. His face was flushed, sweat beading on his forehead, and when he coughed again, his whole body convulsed with it. Marcus. I crouched in front of him. I'm here. It's okay. I'm sorry, he said again, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to bother you, but I couldn't. I can't breathe right. You're not bothering me. Can you stand? He tried. His legs gave out. I caught him, feeling how light he was, how fragile, and something in my chest twisted so hard I could barely breathe myself. I've got you, I said. It's okay. I've got you. I carried him to my car. He barely weighed anything and drove straight to the emergency room at Mount Sinai. The intake nurse took one look at him and called for a doctor. Pneumonia, they said. Advanced. Another few days and it could have been critical. They admitted him, started him on antibiotics and fluids, and I sat in the chair beside his hospital bed while he drifted in and out of feverish sleep. Every so often he'd wake up and look confused, like he couldn't figure out where he was or why I was there. I'd tell him he was safe, that everything was okay, and he'd close his eyes again. Around 3 in the morning, he woke up more lucid than before. You're still here, he said. I'm still here. Why? I thought about that. About Emma crying on the school steps. About Marcus stopping to help a stranger even though he had nothing himself. About the drawing of 2 people holding hands under the sun, because someone should be, I said finally. His eyes filled with tears. He turned his face away, but not before I saw them spill over. My sister, he said, his voice breaking. Her name was Lily. She was 6. She died in May. We were in foster care together, but they split us up after. I couldn't stay there without her. I ran. I'm so sorry, Marcus. She had asthma. Bad asthma. She needed her medication, but there was some mix-up with the insurance or something, and they said they'd get it sorted out, but they didn't. And then he was crying in earnest now, his thin shoulders shaking. It happened so fast. She just couldn't breathe. And I was there, and I couldn't save her. I moved from the chair to the side of his bed, and I put my hand on his shoulder, and I let him cry. That drawing you showed Emma, I said quietly. Lily drew that for you. He nodded against the pillow. She knew you loved her, Marcus. I promise you she knew. I should have saved her. You were a child. You are a child. What happened to your sister wasn't your fault. It was a failure of the system, of the adults who were supposed to take care of you both. But it wasn't your fault. I don't know how to stop feeling like it was. I don't think you ever stop completely, I said. But it gets easier to carry. Eventually, he looked at me then. Really looked. And I saw recognition in his eyes. He saw the same grief I was carrying. Maybe he'd seen it from the beginning. Who did you lose? He asked. My wife. Emma's mother. 2 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. Me too. We sat there in the quiet hum of the hospital. 2 people who'd had pieces of themselves ripped away. And for the first time in 2 years, I didn't feel quite so alone. Marcus stayed in the hospital for 5 days. I was there for most of them, only going home to sleep and spend time with Emma. She wanted to visit, so I brought her. And she and Marcus talked about small things, favorite books, and whether pizza was better with pepperoni or just cheese. And what kind of dog they'd each want if they could have any dog in the world. On the 4th day, a social worker came to talk to Marcus about next steps. He went rigid the moment she walked in. I'm not going back into foster care, he said. Marcus, you're a minor. We need to find you a safe place to know. The social worker looked at me helplessly. I'd been thinking about this for days, turning it over in my mind. examining it from every angle, talking to lawyers and social workers and lying awake at night asking myself if I was crazy. What if he came to stay with me? I said. Everyone in the room turned to stare at me, just temporarily. I continued. While we figure things out, I have space, more than enough space. And Emma and we'd like to have him, Mr. Garrison. There are procedures, background checks and home studies, and I'll do whatever's required. All of it, whatever it takes. Marcus was looking at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. You don't have to do that, he said. I know. I'm not your responsibility. No, I agreed. But you're someone's responsibility. And right now, I'd like it to be mine, if that's okay with you. His face did something complicated. Why? It was the same question he'd asked at 3 in the morning. Why are you still here? Why do you care? Why would you do this? I thought about Emma on those steps, about Marcus stopping to help, about that drawing of the sun still being there even when you can't see it, because you taught my daughter something I'd forgotten, I said. And maybe you can teach me too. What's that? How to be kind even when it's hard. How to stop for people who are hurting. How to remember that the money and the deals and the achievements, none of it means anything if you can't see the sun. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, okay. Just that. Okay. The social worker started explaining the process, the paperwork, the visits, the evaluations. It would take weeks, maybe months before anything was official. But in the meantime, they could arrange for Marcus to stay with me as an emergency placement. I barely heard her. I was watching Marcus, watching the way his shoulders had dropped slightly, the way he wasn't holding himself quite so rigidly anymore. He was going to be okay. We were all going to be okay. It wasn't immediate. And it wasn't easy. Marcus had nightmares. He hoarded food in his room at first, hiding granola bars and crackers in his pillowcases like he was still on the street and didn't know where his next meal was coming from. He flinched at loud noises. He apologized constantly for taking up space, for existing, for needing things, but slowly, so slowly, he started to settle. Emma adored him. She dragged him into games and made him watch her practice her piano scales and told him elaborate stories about her stuffed animals. He was patient with her in a way that broke my heart, gentle and attentive, like she was something precious he was afraid of breaking. I hired a therapist for him, a kind woman named Dr. Reeves who specialized in childhood trauma. I went to therapy myself, finally dealing with the grief I'd been carrying for 2 years. I cut back on work, delegated more, started leaving the office at 5 instead of 8 or 9 or midnight, for the first time since Sarah died. I started living again instead of just existing. 6 months after that October afternoon, the adoption was finalized. Marcus officially became my son. Emma's brother. We were in the judge's chambers when it happened. Just the 4 of us, me, Emma, Marcus, and Judge Chen, who'd handled the case with remarkable kindness. She signed the papers and looked at Marcus over her reading glasses. How does it feel to be officially part of the Garrison family? She asked. Marcus looked at me, then at Emma, like the sun came back out. He said, we took him to lunch after, to that same diner where we'd had dinner that first night. Marcus ordered a burger again, but this time he ate slowly, talking and laughing between bites, not afraid the food was going to disappear. Emma showed him her math test, another solid B, which she was proud of, and I was proud of her for being proud of. Dad says as long as I try my best, that's what matters, she told Marcus. Your dad's a smart guy, Marcus said. He learned it from you, Emma replied. Marcus looked at me, something shifting in his expression. Then he reached into his jacket pocket, a new jacket, one that actually fit, and pulled out something I recognized. That folded piece of paper, creased and worn from being carried for so long. He unfolded it carefully and set it on the table between us. There were the 2 figures holding hands, drawn in crayon by a 6-year-old girl who didn't know she'd be gone within months. And there was the bright sun overhead, yellow and warm and unrelenting. Lily would have liked you guys, Marcus said quietly. I wish we could have known her, I said. Me too. He touched the edge of the drawing lightly, reverently. But I think she'd be happy I found you. That I'm not alone anymore. You're never going to be alone again, I said. That's a promise. Emma reached across the table and put her hand over Marcus's, and I put mine over both of theirs. We sat there like that three people who'd found each other when they needed it most, and I thought about all the things I'd almost missed, almost walked past, almost been too busy or too wrapped up in my own grief to see. I thought about how a homeless boy had taught me more about compassion in 5 minutes than I'd learned in 40 years of building an empire. I thought about how the most important moment of my life had happened on some ordinary school steps on an ordinary October afternoon, when I'd been rich but empty, successful but lost, and a child with nothing had shown me everything that mattered. That night, after Emma and Marcus had gone to bed, I found myself in the living room, looking at the framed photo of Sarah on the mantel. I'd spent 2 years avoiding her eyes, unable to face the woman I'd been without her, but that night, I looked. I think you'd like him, I said to her picture. Marcus, I think you'd like the way he makes Emma laugh, the way he's teaching her to be brave and kind and how to see the sun even when everything feels dark. Sarah smiled back at me from behind the glass. Frozen in time at 35, forever young while I grew older without her. I'm okay, I told her. I'm not the same as I was when you were here. I'm different now, but I think maybe I'm better. Maybe losing you and finding them has made me into someone you'd actually be proud of. The house was quiet around me, warm, full. For the first time in 2 years, I felt her presence not as an absence, but as a blessing, as if she'd been there all along, guiding me toward this moment, toward the people who would help me remember how to be human again. I thought about Marcus on the street, stopping for a crying girl he didn't know, about how one small act of kindness had rippled outward and changed everything, about how we save each other in ways we don't always understand, about how the sun is always there, even when we can't see it, and how sometimes when we're very lucky, someone comes along and reminds us to look up. 3 years have passed since that October afternoon. Marcus is 30 now, tall and getting taller, his voice changing, his face losing the sharp edges of hunger and neglect. He plays basketball at school. He makes B's and occasional A's and has friends who come over on weekends. He still has nightmares sometimes, still carries Lily's drawing with him everywhere, but the shadows in his eyes have started to fade. Emma is 11, confident and kind, doing well in school without the crushing pressure I'd placed on her before. She and Marcus are inseparable, fighting like real siblings one minute, defending each other fiercely the next. And me? I'm still wealthy, still successful, but now I'm other things too. I'm a father who has dinner with his kids every night. I'm a man who volunteers at youth shelters on weekends. I'm someone who stops when he sees people hurting, who doesn't walk past suffering pretending not to see. I'm someone who remembers to look for the sun. Last week, I was walking past Steedy Catherine's elementary. We'd moved to a different neighborhood, but I go back sometimes and I saw a girl sitting on those same steps, crying in that same silent, shoulder-shaking way. I stopped. I sat down next to her, keeping a respectful distance, and I said, "Bad day." She looked at me with tears streaming down her face and nodded. "You know," I said, "being sad just means you care. It means whatever you're going through matters to you. And that's actually a good thing." She blinked at me. "Also," I continued, "even when things feel really dark, the sun's still there. You just can't always see it right away. But it's there, I promise." "How do you know?" she asked. "Someone very wise taught me," I said, "when I needed it most." I didn't stay long. Her mother came out a few minutes later and I let them have their moment. But as I walked away, I thought about the ways we carry forward the kindness we've received. How Marcus had helped Emma, who had helped me, and now I was helping someone else. And maybe someday that girl would help another person, and on, rippling outward. That's what I learned on those school steps 3 years ago. We don't save ourselves alone. We save each other. And sometimes, the people who save us are the ones we least expect, the ones with nothing to give except their presence and their wisdom and their willingness to stop when someone is hurting. Marcus taught me that. A homeless boy with nothing to his name except a sister's drawing and a heart big enough to stop for a stranger. He saved my daughter that October afternoon, and in doing so, he saved me too. Sometimes I still think about the man I was before, the one who measured worth in achievements, who was too busy counting money to count blessings, who had forgotten how to see the sun. I don't miss him. I look at my children now, both of them, and I know what matters. I know what wealth really means. It's not the number in my bank account or the deals I close or the empire I've built. It's this: the three of us at the dinner table, laughing over some joke only Marcus understands. Emma teaching Marcus how to braid hair. Marcus teaching Emma how to make the perfect paper airplane. The way they fight over the remote and share their secrets and have each other's backs. It's coming home to a house that feels like a home instead of a museum. It's knowing that when the darkness comes, and it always does eventually, we'll face it together. Looking for the sun we know is there even when we can't see it. It's remembering that the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. That's what one homeless boy taught a millionaire on an ordinary October afternoon. That's what I'll never forget. That's what I'll spend the rest of my life honoring, by being present, by being kind, by stopping when people need help, by remembering that we're all just humans trying to find our way through the dark, and by always looking for the sun.